I always feel like we need like background music or something to like, you know, like in a waiting room.
Elevator music.
The first one, and you want entrance music. I like it. Set in the bar.
As long as it's not one of those weighing in at 120 pounds.
Yeah, it's not after lockdown. After the first lockdown, fine. Second, no, I was changing weight categories all the way through it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, sweatpants are the go-to nowadays.
Should be the new office uniform.
You know, there was an interesting press release that came through a couple of days ago about that, about how most people are now more nervous about what to wear when they're back in the office than, I don't know, Corona. It's interesting, right? Oh my goodness.
Small thing that's going on.
It's like, but what will I wear? Will my mask match?
I've spoken to people who actually want to lose weight before they go to the gym as well, because they, you know, knew a circle of friends at the start over a year ago and don't want to sit, and so they want to, I don't know, you know, it's quite a bit of anxiety going around on various things.
Yeah. It is a bit sad, really.
That's really sad. Like, I'm not in shape enough to go to the gym.
That doesn't make sense.
I do understand though. Like I used to do classes all the time, like boxing and stuff, and I'm like, I'm not good enough for a class right now. I need to practice.
Boxer, are you?
A little bit on side.
I don't like to talk about it, just live on
it. I mean, it's useful for our topic today: mental health, blowing off steam, that physical mental nexus.
So I was on, I've got a friend called Adam at Gymsharp, and he said, he'd just done a white collar boxing, and he said, well, what's your thing? I said, it's white collar boxing. There's one thing I'd love to do. You know, what would you do if you had no fear of anything? And it would be that. I'd just love to go through that experience. So he's going to try and hold me to that.
I think I'd skydive. I'm scared of heights, so I wouldn't do that. But it looks amazing. Like, if you have no fear, like just, but no.
So I've done a skydive. Yeah, and it's not actually so the worst one was a bungee jump, which was done at 11 o'clock after a few drinks when I was a lot younger, from a crane in a pub car park. That was slightly more dangerous because there were more variables.
Yeah.
Hey guys, we ready to start? Hello everyone, welcome to series 3 of the GBA Lightbulb sessions. The Great British Entrepreneur Awards, in association with BT Skills for Tomorrow, have designed a free live stream series of Lightbulb sessions to support small businesses and entrepreneurs with insightful and advice-driven sessions, featuring some of the UK's brilliant entrepreneurial minds to illuminate your path to entrepreneurial success. You can find out more about BT Skills for Tomorrow by heading to their website at www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow, or by clicking on the link in the comment section. In today's session, Fresh Business Thinking Editorial Director Priscilla Neer will sit down with the founder of workplace wellbeing provider Simon Scott Nelson and Ellie Kayley to discuss the future of mental wellbeing in the workplace. They will reveal the core principles of developing mental resilience and how to improve self-awareness of your mental well-being while developing a roadmap to mental recovery. There is an opportunity to ask questions during this session. If you have a question you'd like to ask, you can pop this in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer these towards the end of the session. Please note there will be a poll towards the end of the session, and all answers will be anonymous. And with that, I'll pass over to our host today, Priscilla Neer.
Thanks, Chloe. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us today, Simon and Ellie. Maybe we can kickstart with a little introduction. Can you introduce yourselves and tell us a bit more about you?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely delighted to be here today. So thank you, Priscilla, and to all the organisers, to BT and Fresh Thinking. So my name is Simon Scott Nelson. I am fortunate enough to be CEO at Wellity Global. And Wellity is the trusted provider of wellbeing solutions that unite everyone and to really try and normalize the conversation around mental health and wellbeing within the workplace and transforming working cultures. I'm also the co-founder of the Great British Workplace Wellbeing Awards, which is designed to champion those who champion others during this time and everything that we've been through over the last year. we're finding that there are leaders that have really come to the forefront to look after the well-being of their team, some really terrific people. And we want to champion those who champion others. And that's why we set up the Great British Workplace Wellbeing Awards to really look after those and shine a light on those that have stepped up during this time and helped their colleagues. I'm also a fellow of the Association of Professional Sales, chair of their Mental Health and Wellbeing Committee, which deals with everyone in the sales industry and looks after their mental health wellbeing, host at Let's Improve Wellbeing podcast. And yeah, just really happy to be here to shine a light on topics, especially on the National HR Day. Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so I'm Ellie Kayley. I'm an assistant business psychologist at Wellity, and I'm also finishing my master's in occupational psychology at Goldsmiths in London. So I'm currently doing my dissertation at the moment. I'm looking at the relationship between working from home during the pandemic and employees' job satisfaction and the role of well-being and work-life balance. So it links really nicely to the work I'm doing with Wellity. I'm so proud to be part of the global solution that they optimize employee mental health and well-being and transform working cultures. I've only been with Wellity for 3 months, but it's safe to say I feel very, very at home, and I've been thrown in the deep end. Today is my first live panel discussion in place of Sadie, who is fantastic. And so, yeah, I'm very excited to be here. And yeah, throughout my time, really, I've just been liaising with clients, delivering and designing training sessions, creating blogs, resources, that kind of thing. So I'm absolutely loving it, and definitely kind of enjoying it more than my master's, so that's great. And I'm looking forward to finishing my master's and properly starting with Wellity in the London hub office that we're thinking about. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here, so thank you.
Wow, the energy, I mean, that's a great way to kickstart this conversation as well. It's all about well-being, and I guess both of your introductions just show how passionate you are about it as well. But when it comes to mental health and well-being, the conversation seems to be about identifying problems and adopting a solutions-focused approach. So when it comes to resilience, how would a business or even individuals try to develop that resilience? Like, where would they even start?
So I'll start with like a little definition of resilience. In the Dictionary of Psychology, it's defined as the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioural flexibility. So it's a bit of all three, really, and it's adjusting to external and internal demands. So it's a bit of a mouthful, and when I read it, I was like, whoa, that's a lot. But it's really just about sort of having the ability and tendency to recover and adapt in the face of adversity, whether that's from trauma or tragedy or stress at work. And it can be from family or relationship problems or health problems or financial problems. So it can come from anything, really. But it's mainly about growing as a person and sort of learning from experience. So in answer to your question, because I haven't really answered, but it's sort of, that was the definition. It's more sort of like not about preventing mental health problems. It's more about sort of everyone in life will face difficulty, whether that's with their mental health or with anything else. And resilience determines how we overcome it and we adapt and we face stressful situations. Everyone deals with things in different ways. We're all very different human beings. So sometimes people think it's about having experienced lots of trauma, and if somebody's gone through a lot in their life, they're really resilient, and that's great. But if they haven't really learned from it or adapted and sort of thought, okay, this is how I'm going to adapt and become better, then they might not necessarily be as resilient. So it's very dependent on the situation and the person. But I think everyone throughout the last year has definitely faced adversity and fear and sort of uncertainty. So we've all been tested, our resilience has all been tested, but it's just reflected in how you overcome that, and then you move forward, I think.
I think that's a brilliant answer, honestly. In terms of well-being, the thing to remember is that well-being is personal. Fact, it's individual. There's no one broad brush. you know, when we talk about resilience, we interview a lot of people at Wellity. We talk with motivational speakers who have been through tragedy in their life and have bounced back, or suffered some sort of tragedy where they've had to become resilient. And, you know, I've had my issues with mental health, which we'll come on to in a bit. And when I say to them, oh, yeah, but mine's nothing like yours, you know, to Pam Warren, who was in the Ladbroke Grove rail disaster and suffered horrific injuries, life-changing injuries. She was known as the lady in the mask. And then she'll say, no, absolutely not. That's just what happened to me. But everyone's benchmark is different. Everyone's story is individual. And it could be the thing about a culmination, which is, you know, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things happen to you, and you can deal with those individually on your own, and that's fine. When the 6, 7, 8 thing come, that really tests people, because that's the culmination thing, and your energy levels are a lot weaker at that stage, and your perspective is nigh. So yeah, resilience is different to everyone.
I think what you said is so true about almost a comparative streak in us when adversity strikes. It's kind of like, almost like you don't deserve to call yourself resilient. It's like a badge of honor that you need to earn after going through something horrific. But in terms of improving your lives, and since it is such a subjective concept, where would people start? I mean, when it comes to even identifying a problem, a lot of people seem to struggle with that.
What's the problem? I mean, you go through stuff. The issue here is education around mental health. So look, let's be authentic about this. We deal with Wellity about people going first, creating that safe space by going first, and creating an energy in a room where people can come forward with their own stories and be normal, in effect, just talk normally. So if I take it back to when I had my issues, which was about 3 or 4 years ago, the point for me was education. When I was on my downward spiral, I just didn't know where the bottom was. Now, when you don't know, there's an awful fear, because you become isolated. You think the problem is just you. The biggest compliment we can ever hear in any of our training sessions, and we work with SMEs and the biggest companies around the world, is when people say, I thought it was just me. That means that space has been opened up for them to say, and everyone, honestly, you can get emotional sometimes. They say, I thought it was just me. And you realize that it is education. When you don't know where the bottom is, your fear. Now, when I was at school, I many years ago, to be called mental was an insult on the playground. And now we're asking people of my generation and up to actually put their hand up and really come forward and admit to the very diagnosis that was actually an insult when they were younger. So unless the language has changed, the education around that has changed and adapted, people won't put their hand up because they're still that child in the playground. Now, for me, it was like a snow globe. It was continuously shaking a snow globe. My anxiety was rife. And it was only when I put the snow globe down, I could really everything started to settle, and I could see what was in the middle. And that's what we're really letting people know. It's all right to step off sometimes and really reevaluate. So for me, it's education. It's someone to be there and say, look, this is what happens. You will feel like this, you'll feel like that, you'll go down, you'll be scared. And that's why we do the motivational stories, so that people can try and educate people as to a seamless lift off the bottom. And I would say it's fear.
Do you have anything to add, Ellie?
Yeah, I completely second everything Simon said. It's definitely the stigma around it. And like Simon said, it used to be such a big thing to say that you were struggling. And now that's the whole point. What we do, we want people to be able to just accept that we're all struggling in one way or another, and that's okay. And I think if we create the environment where people talk about it without even thinking about it, it becomes safe for everybody to. And I think even realizing you have a problem or an issue or anything is knowing other people around you do, and then thinking, oh, I actually felt like that the other day. Maybe I am struggling. And I think it's having a community around you who are going to support you and also accept that, this is what it is and we're in it together, kind of thing. So
speaking to someone the other day, a close family member, and when you talk to someone who's very down, you say, well, maybe you should speak to someone. I did. There are benefits of it. Imagine talking to someone in an environment, you don't know them. It's no strings. There's no comeback. You just talk. And And yeah, I'm really interested. Yeah, I'm really interested. Okay, all right, well, let's sort out the counselling. What? Counselling? No, absolutely not. No. And so it's that sort of fear of these antiquated words that I think we need to change. And people, when you say about to bring it back, when you say about identifying what a problem is, people don't know it's a problem because they haven't got the different differentiators. They haven't got the track record. They haven't got the benchmarks to know, well, what is good? Well, this is just normal, isn't it? This is me. I'm meant to be down. I'm rubbish. I'm comfortable with being down. I don't want anything else because I don't deserve it. Well, you do, and that's when you need some external influences to sort of cajole you out and give you reasons to value yourself, to know your worth, and know you're good enough.
I mean, you're saying is just hitting so many notes, because a lot of the discussions that's been coming up, like at work for us, as we're brainstorming, was this culture of almost the other extreme of toxic positivity, of kind of like not maybe even having a space where you can just be down or talk about the darker feelings you might experience. But when it comes to like a work environment, I guess there's so many, the idea of being your authentic self, but at the same time projecting an image at work that might hold people back and create the stigma or make the stigma worse. So in a work environment, how can individuals even discuss this with their managers or their coworkers, and what can business owners do about it as well?
Well, look, if you don't want to discuss it, you won't discuss it. I mean, especially going back when everyone's different. The only thing is to be empathetic. We used to say in sales, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in that ratio. Well, when we're going back now, no one knows what everyone's been up to for the last year and a half. And I would say that empathy is the biggest thing. Compassion and listening, engagement. Look, let's face it, no one knows what the rules are anymore. We're not going back to a new normal. We're not going back to a normal anything. We're not bouncing forward or bouncing back. We're not bouncing anywhere. Everyone's drained. What we are going into is an area where it's uncharted territory. So we have a natural tendency to try and fix people. When someone comes up to you, say, oh no, you go, no, I've got this, go and speak to this person, take this pill, do that. And actually people just want to be heard, and not necessarily fix. They can fix themselves in their own time, but they just do want that safe space. And so all I'd say is that engagement is key. Listen, you don't know the answers, have some self-compassion as well. As we see, HR day today, and we see that that people they're putting so much pressure on themselves to try and sort everyone out, but actually we're all in it together. So collectively, let's sort this rule book out. Let's look at what everyone's been through, and for goodness sake, listen. Now really is the time for listening, empathy, and engagement with your teams.
I think since today's topic is about building this roadmap towards resilience, what would a mental health roadmap even look like?
Well, Ellie, you've got pillars of mental resilience, haven't you?
Yeah, I can quickly discuss there's like 6, I think I've sort of come up with. Well, I haven't come up with, but there's 6 common themes that are associated with resilience. The first being self-awareness, and we've spoken a lot about that already. It's being conscious about your own feelings and your emotions, and how you feel about the situation and everyone around you. The more you know about yourself, the better you can prepare for adversity and for challenges. So having the control over your feelings and knowing how you adapt to things is really important. Relationships with others and yourself is really important. I know throughout the past year, we've sort of had to go to Zoom and phone calls, but it's been one of the kind of the best parts of lockdown for me. I've connected with people like friends and family that I haven't in ages, because it's a time to sort, okay, we've all dealt with such a difficult time, and we've kind of realized what we actually appreciate in life, and that is the people around us, and it kind of makes you realize what is important. And I think connecting with people is so important, talking about how you feel, talking about what you've enjoyed, sharing that with other people. Thirdly is like expectations. So we were speaking yesterday about having expectations is really important, and the ambition and the drive is great, but if you set your expectations too high and you try and perform to something that isn't unachievable, it always will bring you down. You know, you won't achieve it, and then you'll think, oh, well, I failed, or I wasn't good enough for it. But actually, if at the beginning you'd thought, that's unrealistic, I can hit this deadline this week, you know, and that's and achieving that and putting all your effort into that is better than thinking you can achieve the world and then, you know, only getting half done. So that's another key part. Positive outlook. We spoke about you've just said about the positivity in the workplace, and it can be quite hard that everybody is positive all the time, and you want to just be sad, you just want to feel down, and you don't really have a reason, but you know. And I think being positive is really important, and being optimistic, and it drives like motivation and wanting to achieve everything more. And because if you're negative about things, it's about, oh, kind of, I don't really need to do that. But also acknowledging that you don't have to be positive all the time. And it's having a good balance, I think. And emotional intelligence sort of like links to that. That's being aware of your emotions, controlling and expressing them in appropriate times, and knowing how to handle them with other people as well is really important, especially at work, because people worry about being too emotional with their manager, for example, and it shouldn't be a worry. It should just be, I know how to deal with it in this situation, and being open and honest about it. And then finally, resourcefulness. I think being able to find like quick ways of sort of overcoming difficulties, and like it's been shown, learning new skills and things like that activates new network pathways in the brain, and it's really good for you, and trying something new and keeping your mind active, you know, imagination and that kind of thing. So it's kind of a culmination of all of them, really. And yeah, so in terms of the roadmap, that's probably the foundations. But
honestly, it's brilliant. It's lovely to hear you say those pillars, because, you know, Wellity, we've got 5 main pillars for well-being: physical well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, personal development, and financial well-being. And those are the topics that we do when we go into businesses. When we talk about roadmap, you know, the roadmap to recovery and resilience is one of our biggest products. So we know this very well. Let's simplify it. The roadmap is like driving a car, right? Your mental health is like going on a long journey and driving a car. And on the way, you're going to have junctions, you're going to have roundabouts, you're going to have delays, and you're going to have diversions. Things don't always go your way. And again, it's that education. If someone said to you, you're going straight up the M5 and you'll be there in half an hour, but then you hit a roadblock, you hit something else happens, there's an accident, you've got to be diverted, you have to go back, then that's all a shock to you. Whereas if someone says that's going to happen, i.e. the education, then you can prepare for it, you can fuel for it, can't you? You can take your snacks, you can do whatever you want, and you know where you're going. So mental health must acknowledge that life is not just a smooth journey. Intentional pacing is something that I know we'll come on to later, which is the fact that you can't just think, right, it's 3 hours away, I'm going to put my foot down, I'm going to go 120 miles an hour the whole way. Well, you know, you'll get caught for speed, you'll run out of fuel, you'll probably crash, everything else. So you've just got to be very purposeful about your well-being, which is why the conversation is being open now. You might get lost, in which case you need to ask for support. All right, you need to stop, you need to ask for directions. And that's the same as getting this counseling, or, you know, heaven forbid, therapy, or support, general support that is becoming far more, rightly so, far more commonplace. A long journey, when you're stressed and tired, is sometimes better with someone else as well in the car, to let you know, to make you sure you don't nod off, to give you directions and support and companionship. And that's the bit around talking to people with mental health. You know, BT here today, it's good to talk, one of the best straplines I've ever heard, and so relevant when you're doing a mental health journey. And recognizing your alerts, recognizing your warning signs. So when we're driving along in the car, you get alerts on your dashboard, don't you? The orange light comes up, you think, oh, I can ignore that for a bit, I'll do that later. It's not actually that pressing. The red light comes on about the coolant, or says, right, pull over, you know you've got to do it. Now, we have our own dashboard, so it's becoming very aware of your dashboard. What are your signs? What are your indicators when you're tired, when you're jaded, when you're snappy, when you're working long hours, when you haven't seen your family for a long time? And again, this is about education. If someone says these are the red flags, you go, I've seen that light. I recognize that warning light. That, page 64? Yeah, I better go and check this into the garage, or I better go and talk to someone. Or actually, I'm just going to take a few days off and do that rest and recovery piece. So without education, you just keep going. You could run out of fuel. You've got energy drains and gains, which means that some things, if you're driving uphill constantly, you're going to lose all of your it's not going to be so efficient. Some cars are more efficient than others. So know your dashboard as well. And that's where we bring it back to that roadmap. It's becoming aware. I think I just
Simon,
talked way too long.
Sorry, really quickly, in the Q&A, someone's asked if we could just repeat the 5 pillars of mental well-being at Wellity. I don't know if you just want to address them again.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ellie. Physical well-being, mental well-being, social well-being, personal development, and financial well-being. So people think, a lot of the time people think well-being is either completely on one end of the scale, which is poor mental health, or on the other end of the scale, which is fluffy slippers and fruit bowls. And actually it's something in between that affects all different parts of us. And again, that's the engagement piece of listening to what is actually with the individual.
I'm glad you mentioned the perks, the fruit bowls and the gym memberships and all of those nice things that a lot of trendy businesses have been trying out. But I guess a really relevant point there is about the role of employers in this conversation. There's only so much people can do without that support, as you mentioned, Simon. So what do you think employers can do, considering that so many of them seem to think that they're doing enough? Like there's so many surveys that we see where employers are investing in employee well-being, but employees still feel like not enough is being done.
It's interesting when you talk about are they doing enough, the one thing to bear in mind, especially when it comes to workplace well-being, is that there is no actual finish line. That well-being is not a well-being week fad or a thing that comes and goes, or next Wednesday we've got pancake day, it's going to be mental health day. It's ongoing. Okay, so doing enough, the most effective strategy in these times is not about doing enough or how much you're doing. It's not a competition to say we're doing all this, because you might be firing in the wrong direction at the wrong target. So this is why we do the wellbeing surveys that go out and really try and understand, is it financial wellbeing, is it mental health? But it's how often you're measuring it. That's where the people, the organizations that are getting this right are the ones that realize, well, there are no rules. We don't know what the rules are. Let's remember. So all you can do is constantly measure it and adapt it. It's a movable feast. So the companies doing best at the moment are the ones that know that they'll never finish. Do you know what I mean? The ones that embrace it as a thing and know that it's going to be a continual process. It's a journey and not a destination. And the other thing really is to not deal with everything as a whole brush. On Thursday we're going to do something on financial well-being, or Tuesday we're going to do something about healthy eating, without engaging with the team. Because you talk about healthy eating and peeling kiwis and chopping all this for breakfast, well, there are a lot of people out there that don't even want to get out of bed, that known are considering organizing themselves to get fresh fruit and how to cut, and that can actually be quite dangerous if you're trying to talk that way. So measurement, we talk about SMART goals in business, and we'll talk about SMART goals in well-being, which is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and within a time limit. And the fact with well-being is there is no time limit. It's continuous. As well as I do, we all go up and down, and we don't know where we are from one day to the next. It's very hard to plan how we're going to be, and that's why continual measurement. And how do you know you're doing enough? So this is the thing when the word should in well-being, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, or people saying you should be doing this and you should be doing that. The word should be drop kicked out the window, really. Because how do you know who is this almighty person that's so right in everything, that's saying you should do this? I mean, introduce me to them, because they are brilliant, and I would, I'd love to meet them and have a chat down the pub. Who's saying that you're doing enough as well? Because doing enough could mean doing enough as per your budget, doing enough as per what the CEO allows you to do or the senior leader allows you to do. What doing enough is what your staff say, yeah, that's enough, because actually KPIs around absence, well, we've hit that benchmark, so that's enough. You simply can't think of anything else. That's what the issue is. Doing enough sometimes is, we've done enough, because there aren't enough options out there, because well-being, although it's becoming a very saturated thing at the moment, well-being is relatively new to actually get right, and it may just be that they've actually run out of options, so we've done enough. And that's where Wellity comes in, a whole suite of options and other well-being providers as well. Well-being is not just for one company, it's a collaborative thing. We all need to pull together with this and give as many options as possible, but get an external third party to look at what you could do or where within your time constraints, within your budget, within your culture that's been instilled by whoever's at the top. And it does come top down.
We just had a great comment from David Swain. He says, those that get it are those that realize well-being is an endless journey. Like Simon Sinek calls it, the infinite mindset. And that is so true about it being, it's a never-ending journey. I think, you know, your well-being will be with you for your life. Like, so thinking there is an end point, it's not realistic. Like, you know, we will have the dips and the good dips and what are they called?
The highs and the lows.
The highs and the lows. That's it. Yeah.
And let's face it, you know, there are a lot of HR professionals now who are under pressure, because it's a bit like at school when the English teacher has said, well, can you do PE as well? You teach the kids PE. A lot of people are getting this as a secondary job put on, and then you've got to solve everything: mental health, well-being. What do I do? Where do I turn? And, you know, give them a mention as well. They're doing some great things out there. It's not easy. So take the pressure off ourselves, organizations, take the pressure off yourself. The worst thing you can do is do nothing, obviously. So don't do nothing, but take your pressure off yourself, call a company in, and just talk through the ins and outs of the structure of your organization and what you think might be.
Yeah. Since Ellie, like, you've been keeping an eye on the comments, which is fantastic. And I've also kind of taken a peek at some of the questions and just conscious of time. Before we move on to some of the questions, because wow, they're so relatable. So watch the space. I did have a couple of more questions left to ask you, but one thing that stood out is the term intentional pacing. What is that in reference to? Like, what's the context there?
So intentional pacing is, we were talking about change and being presented with change in life and having a situation that you're unsure about. And it's about sort of stopping and thinking about what direction is the best direction for you. It's centered around change management. So what's changed? Like, how has this affected me? How do I feel about it? And being self-aware, like, you know, this big word, being self-aware, it's very relevant. It's understanding how I feel about the situation and what's going to be best for me. So it's in line with John Fisher's model. And I've just done all these like waving with my arms, but the model of personal change with, you know, going through the motions. You start with sort of denial, you know, oh, I don't want this change, like I'm not ready for it, which then sort of changes into happiness and you're excited for a change, and actually it can be really positive. And then the change comes and you're like, whoa, okay, it's happening. I'm a bit, you know, fearful, angry, maybe frustrated. And then you can hit fear, depression, guilty sometimes. And that's the low, but then you kind of accept and acknowledge the change, and then you sort of come out of it. So it's about pacing your energy and the direction you want to go in, and choices and making the decisions. We spoke about the crossroads and the roadmap, and metaphorically, you know, if you hit a crossroads and you're driving, you don't just take one of the lanes for fun. Like you kind of hopefully know where you're going, you know, you've got an out, like, you know where you want to get to. So in life, if you hit a crossroads, you need to take that time to think, okay, where am I going to get if I go that way, or if I go the other way? So stopping, comparing the options, seeing what is available, and then going in the right direction, whatever that might be. I know a lot of people at the moment, and I'm very bad for it myself, work at 100 miles an hour. I try and cram everything I can into the day, and I can't wait until tomorrow for what's, you know, and that kind of thing. But sometimes there is something really therapeutic in just stopping and just stop and think, okay, am I going to really benefit if I carry on going at this rate? Like I need to reassess the situation. I need to, and it's having the intention. So intentional pacing, it's actually acknowledging you're making that decision to stop and then reevaluate. So with resilience, it's having the adversity and then thinking, okay, I know how I'm going to deal with this, and I'm going to deal with it in this way. And yeah. So.
Yeah, put the snow globe down every so often, let it settle, think clearer, you know, give yourself, we talk about the further you go down, when you're tired, and when you go into the fact that you need recovery, when you're really, the quicker you can see that dashboard and your alerts, the better. The further you drive with the red lights on, the more expensive in terms of a car, the more problems that you're going to have. So as soon as you see these lights, be aware. But people only know what those lights mean through education, and you only get educated when you're in a safe space. So we see loads of leaders at the moment, senior leaders, they are talking about the last year and a half. They're just saying about their experiences. It's not forced fun, you know, it's okay to have actually got through the last year and thought, I've spent more time with my family. Some industries have gone up in terms of revenue. That's, you know, that's their well-being, it's personal. But some people actually don't want to talk about the fact they may have enjoyed the last year in terms of the time that they've had together with their family, etc. Well, that space isn't quite safe enough for them to open up. So yeah, it's around education.
Okay, well,
And
thanks
also,
a lot.
you know what, just to finish that piece, a lot of senior leaders as well, they don't want to talk about it for fear of retribution or fear that, you know, they might get, they might say the wrong thing. And we see this with gender, race, and now it's mental health, that sometimes for fear of saying the wrong thing means actually I'll swerve that altogether and I won't mention it. Don't come in here and talk about that, I might get it wrong. So opening that safe space for senior leaders to go, can we say this? Is this acceptable now? Is this, you know, open that space, talk about the language we use, say it, you know, and then be educated so that when other people say it, you never want to stop someone talking about mental health and go, you just used the wrong term, get out. You actually want to say, well, there are other ways that we could put this and reframe it.
Yes, the cancel culture, the dreaded thing, right? Always
It's a
worried
big thing. It's a big thing. You know, I'll just leave that subject all alone. I won't do it. But with education, you can know that you can broach certain topics confidently.
I think, again, in the interest of time, let's jump to questions because I see a couple of really interesting ones. One person says, I want to talk to my boss about how I'm feeling and how it's impacting my work, but I don't feel like my boss would understand and really take it on board. What should I do? Wow. It's a tough
Well, I mean,
one.
Ellie, jump in if you want to. But I mean, honestly, I will say this in all the groups we do, this is probably one of the things that we see coming up most often. And it means that the preventative measures haven't been put in place before, obviously. And actually, a leader, when you're as good as the company you keep, i.e. the 5 people that are around you, and you spend a lot of time in that person's company, it can be hugely detrimental to your mental health. And that's why a third party often is needed. I mean, obviously, it goes without saying that with any of these, if you are suffering from any sort of condition or really worried, your GP is your first port of call. But when we talk about taking it into the workplace, it would be to mention it to someone else if you feel safe, and maybe, I know that you HR, there's a lot in your EAP, within organizations, EAPs, and actually a lot of people say, well, we wanted to do counseling, we wanted to do one-on-ones, I needed to speak to people, and all of these are in the EAP. But it's just that there's again, it's education. They don't know quite how to get it. But does that mean I'm going to have to register and ask HR for my details, and they're going to ask me why, and I'm going to have to go, I've got a problem with the boss? So all of these are preventative measures. But to that individual, it would be to keep talking, find a different avenue and a third party that's unconnected. But yeah, definitely approach the subject.
I like that third party thing. It's like safety and sort of creating that safe space as a starting point.
Yeah, and ask for your details for your EAP. A lot of organizations have these services within them. It's just, and then you're off and running. They are third party, and a lot of them are anonymous, etc. But please be aware and know that this is a huge issue, and to be able to have to really report it to the very person that's perhaps putting that pressure on you is an awful thing. It's like any sort of relationship, and relationships relies on you talking to other people and getting perspective on your own situation.
I think we might have time for one more question, and this is a good one. It's about boundaries, really. Would you say that there's a line to be drawn between your personal life and emotions and bringing those into the workplace? Or is the line the stigma that we should be able to talk openly in the workplace? Okay, so I think if I got that, it's like, how much do you bring into work? Or is it about bringing everything to work? Where do you draw the line?
Can I answer? Is that, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I think yeah, they're right in saying the line is the stigma. I think your personal problems and your emotions are going to affect your work, so why shouldn't they be able to be brought to work? And being honest with people about it is the best thing you can do. And I think people worry about bringing it to work, and people worry about it having an effect on, you know, other people's perceptions of them. But I do think that's the stigma around it, and I think being able to talk openly about it at work will make the person feel more comfortable at work, and therefore affect the performance and improve a performance. Interestingly, I did my undergraduate dissertation on similar things. So I looked at disclosures of mental health amongst leaders and how that affected their followers' perceptions. So say your boss said to you, oh, I've just come back from 3 weeks leave, I've been really struggling with my mental health, and then assessing whether their followers thought they were trustworthy or not. And interestingly, the followers reported that they did trust them more. They thought that they positively evaluated it. They said that they were being more transparent, more open, and it created that safe space for them to then think, well, if my manager said that to me, then I can say that to them. You know, it creates that relationship. And so that was really interesting. And for me, I think just acknowledging with each other that you can talk about these things, and if it's going to affect your life, work is a huge element of life. So why shouldn't it be kind of intertwined? So yeah,
it's trust, isn't it? It's trust. What we've got to bear in mind is certainly within the bigger organizations, SMEs are far more reactive. You feel every bump of the road really in startups and smaller companies. When you get to the bigger organizations, some of the senior leaders have spent 20, 30, in some cases 40 years building a work profile, building their brand. And so, my goodness, I couldn't possibly come in and tell everyone something and risk that crumbling away. But we find the most successful organizations with cultures are the ones that do start at the top. I think the thing is just to be normal, because everyone knows, especially after the last year, everything else came away from our lives, and we were just concentrating on the things that mattered. So top down, try it. You know, the fear of trying something, and then, you know, when you build it up in your own head and you think, I can't do that, what's the worst that can happen? Someone's going to actually realize that you're being normal. So should you bring it into the workplace? I can honestly feel the anxiety with some people that don't want to, because that safe space hasn't been created. We champion those who go first, and we shine a light, certainly with the Great British Workplace Wellbeing Awards and at Wellity, on those leaders who go first. Start the conversation. By doing that, you're leaving yourself open. Vulnerability is the new strength. You know, it is not the flogging the racehorse, you know, and not attending to its wounds and everything else that we used to see in many industries. This is the empathetic leader. And now is the time to create your legacy. Now is the time for leaders to step forward. You judge a leader on how they deal with their teams through a crisis. Well, we're through a crisis now, and there'll be a hangover to COVID where we all sort out this and make our own rules. So now is the time for leaders, we'd encourage, to go first, you know, moderately, as far as you're comfortable, and in some shape or form, might not be you, might be someone else, but certainly champion those and get that accepted behavior, that it's okay not to be okay.
Well, thank you so much, Simon and Ellie. I'm going to hand it over to Chloe for any final questions or comments.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Thank you so much, Ellie and Simon, for joining us. I have included both Ellie and Simon's LinkedIn profiles in the comment section, because I can see that there's a few questions we didn't get through the audience ones. So please feel free to head over there and ask them any questions that you may have that unfortunately we didn't get to answer today. Before we sign off, if you wanted the audience to come away with one clear takeaway from this session, what would it be?
Who's first?
I'll go first.
Go on then.
I think for me, be brave. I think, like we just said, being the first person to talk about something or opening up, it sets the environment. It opens the space. It starts the conversation. Don't be worried about the outcome. And if it does end up becoming a negative outcome, then, you know, overcoming that and just sort of taking that first step is the main thing. Yeah, be brave.
Love that, be brave. I would say, look, it's a roadmap. Be aware of your dashboard, be aware of your signals, do something when your amber lights come on, your red lights come on. It's that roadmap to recovery and resilience. And every so often put the snow globe down, let everything settle, and intentionally pace your own way back to recovery.
Thank you both, and thank you, Procida, for hosting today's session as well. Our next Lightbulb session will be at the same time next week with our very own Procida, as she'll be discussing getting your story out there and what journalists are looking for. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of this recording later on today. And you can find the replay and future sessions at www.lightbulb-sessions.haysummit.com. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Ellie, Simon and Procida.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.